Welcome everyone. I am Alen Amirkhanian. I'm the director of the AOA Acopian Center for the Environment.
I'm Ջինմարի Փափելyan. I'm the executive director of Armenia Tree Project.
This conference has been a year in the making, and we're very proud that it has gotten the resonance that we have received. It has received.
We're so proud to present this with our colleagues at AUA, and we're anticipating a really lively discussion on the topics of forest conservation, restoration, and afforestation.
These are really the three important topics that I think this conference will address. As Jeanmarie mentioned, conservation is a big issue in Armenia. Restoration of forest landscapes is a big issue, and also afforestation, planting new forests. And ultimately, our goal is to create an action agenda which can support the government's process in developing a policy strategy and an action plan for the forest sector.
So just a little bit of background about Armenia Tree Project. This organization was founded in 1994 by Carolyn Lugar, an activist from the Boston area. And Carolyn, our founder, is with us today. Hi, Carolyn. And the Tree Project's mission is to assist the Armenian people in improving their standard of living by using trees. It's also to protect the global environment. And in doing so, Armenia Tree Project is guided by the need to promote self-sufficiency, aid those with the fewest resources, and conserve the indigenous ecosystem. In the past 25 years, we have planted 1,000 hectares of new forests in Armenia. We've established 1,300 community tree planting sites all over Armenia and Artsakh. We've created hundreds of jobs, and we've educated thousands of children about the need to protect and preserve the environment. We couldn't think of a better way to celebrate our 25th anniversary than joining with AUA's Acopian Center to create this discussion with all the local, regional, and international experts. And we're so gratified that the government of Armenia is here participating in the conversation. We understand that you have got a commitment to the environment just as we do, and we appreciate it.
I can go on, of course, thanking for ATP for their tremendous contribution to the planting of trees in Armenia for the past 25 years. I think it's very appropriate that we are celebrating the 25th anniversary with focusing on where we are now and where we go forward in the future, and how we should do our future forest-related work, taking a pause to think and reflect on what has happened, and also bring in international expertise to help us understand the sector and where we're going with this sector. The topics that we will cover in this conference are pretty varied. We will have a discussion of where do forests fit into the national policy, development policy in general. We'll talk about rural energy demand, poverty, and how that's driving deforestation. We'll talk about and what to do about that. We'll talk about donor coordination. A lot of donor money is coming to Armenia. So how should that be coordinated, and how should we enhance the impact of donor activities in the country? Innovative financing, that's going to be a whole discussion that we will have with very good experts, both from abroad and within Armenia. Water solutions. We have the honor of having Omre Bone from the Israeli Jewish National Fund. They are planting trees in places that have very little water, and they have come up with very innovative solutions to addressing water challenges. And Dr. Bone has been very generous in offering us a bilateral relationship and working with Israel to understand and learn from the 20 years of experience they've had in Israel, or more than 20 years of experience they've had in forestry work. Community support. We're very happy to have David Matenge from Kenya, the Green Belt Movement. Ms. Matai, Dr. Matai, who won the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize, established that organization. And that is an organization that has demonstrated how to get community support and community engagement in forestry work. And as we understand, community support is critical when it comes to making sure that things happen on the ground, and we don't have opposing forces fighting each other in this kind of work. IT sector, technological innovation, what is the role of that? Biodiversity. Anytime we plant a forest or deforest, we impact biodiversity. So how is that going to be worked out, both from a larger biodiversity perspective, but also from the perspective of administrative process, how we're going to ensure that. And nurseries and commercial forestry, we're going to probably need about anywhere from 200 to 500 million trees to cover what we're planning. Where is that going to come from? Fire prevention, readiness, and role of research institutions. It's time to really bring science into the picture and make this education and science intensive process, because that's how we're going to get the efficiencies and the progress that we need to achieve our goals. If I could just take this works. I'm stuck, sorry. Okay, so if you allow me, entertain me 2 minutes, I want to give you an overview of the forestry issues as we see them. And in some ways it's provocative, challenging, but I think it's good to frame the questions in this way and have a discussion around this. The Republic of Armenia, this doesn't work. So Armenia's land is divided into different use types. We have agricultural land, special protected areas, forest land, urban land, and there's 5 other categories that are small and they're lumped together into the other. Most of Armenia's land, 69% is agricultural land. And then we have protected areas and urban land. The forest cover, I think the cameras are blocking probably. Okay. So the forest cover, the statistics we have, and I have taken all the statistics from official government sources. And I have to say that our government sources are in perfect disharmony. So I think we need to work, one of the things we need to work on going forward is really audit and clean up the numbers in the government. These are all based on cadastral data and also government decisions. So about 86% of the forest land is covered by forests. The rest were dedicated in the Soviet period, let's say, to deforestation, but never was done. So it's available to be afforested. Our protected areas, our Ministry of Environment's Biodiversity Management Authority agency tells us, and this is the number established by the 2014 government decision, 110,000 hectares is covered by forests. True or not, that's to be determined. I think that's one of the work that the Ministry of Environment, now that all the forest sector is within one ministry, I think there's a great opportunity to really clean up the field and clean up the data in this year. Because if we don't, there's a lot of potential for funders and financiers to present problems, and because there's a lot of corruption risks if the numbers aren't presented well. Also, in the agricultural land and the urban land, there might be some fractions of forest cover. And that also we need to capture, and we don't know that. So if we look at these numbers as it is, we have about 400,000 hectares of Armenia covered by forests, if these numbers are true. So one of the first things we need to do, of course, is establish that. And of course, the other, probably more important thing is to make sure these are conserved and restored. Because over the past 30 years, we have degraded this forest substantially, and a lot of work needs to go into restoration of this area that we already have covered as forests. And then the question is, should we increase the forest cover? Should we increase the cover? Well, in some ways that question has been answered. The government, both the previous and the current government, have established the will to go forward and double the forest cover or increase the forest cover to about 600,000 hectares of Armenia. And so that, if the map here is correct, about 200,000, and if we don't agree with this 400,000, maybe the 344 is often what is mentioned as the forest cover. About 200 to 270,000 hectares we have to cover as a new forest, and that's a substantial amount of land. So the question is, where will we deforest that additional forest, and how many trees are we going to need, and what kind of trees are we going to need for that process? And I think, well, 44,000 is there, waiting for us, if that's correct, that number is correct. And the additional amount will probably have to come from agricultural land. and probably some urban, not much. Urban will be more symbolic, getting citizens involved, engaged in the forestry sector, but the bulk of that additional coverage will come taking away from the agricultural sector and giving it to the forestry sector. Although we might also think that agriculture and forestry are not opposite to each other. Maybe they can be working together. And here, we're talking about potential of commercial forests and community forests. It's also a way of meeting the demands for energy and also income generation for the communities. How many trees? Again, this is where also science and new knowledge will come in. We have, if we go to 50, 60 years ago, science and knowledge of 50, 60 years ago, for 200,000 hectares, 3,000 trees per hectare, we're probably going to need around 600 million trees over the next 30 years. And if, of course, we go with more modern approaches, we can achieve much greater efficiency, and probably we can do 1,000 trees a hectare. So we're talking about 200 million trees over the next 30 years. Either way, it's a substantial number, and there are questions about nursery capacity and technical knowledge and science capacity that we need to generate in Armenia and partner around the world. So with that, we wanted to give you a broad overview of how we see the challenges that we're going to address this next day and a half. There we have a great number of speakers from Armenia and from abroad, and we're looking forward to that intensive and rigorous discussion.
Everyone here loves forest and is passionate about making sure that Armenia has sufficient forest cover and that the environment is healthy. We are grateful to everyone who joined us yesterday for our site visits to the Dilijan National Forest and to Armenia Tree Project's nursery, forest, and greenhouse operation in Margahovit. So we could reframe the discussion with what we saw yesterday. I wanted to point out and thank the photographer for these gorgeous photos, all taken of forests in Armenia.
I don't think is here.
Yeah, so they're just beautiful, and we look forward to the discussion. We know that we're all passionate about forests, and we'll have some key takeaways. When we're done with this conference, we hope to produce a white paper with key takeaways from the discussions that we've had today. So thank you.
Thank you. And maybe with that, we can now turn to a very special guest we have today. It is an honor for us to have the Prime Minister of Armenia join us and make a very strong political statement about the significance of forests in the national policy and national development and horizons for Armenia going forward, and what do forests mean in Armenia's future. And you know, having assets like this, it takes hundreds of years to have assets like this, and any government will have to have a position on how we manage and we preserve these assets and how we utilize these assets. I think those are, any government is incumbent on any government to really address these issues. And with that, we are, again, have an honor to invite Mr. Nikol Phashinyan to talk to us about the government's perspective and approach.